The meeting of the Board of Selectmen for Tuesday, March 3rd, 2020 will come back to order. We have just adjourned from an executive session. This is the opening of our open session for the meeting. Would you all please join me and rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Tonight's meeting is being broadcast over Stoughton Media Access. It's also being recorded for free broadcast, and so that folks can view it over the internet. We have a overfull agenda. We just completed an executive session of about an hour and a half as we work towards completing goals and objectives for the town manager. Later in the meeting, we will have a presentation by Mary Beth Bernard on a 360 performance evaluation that has been performed for the town manager's position. We are missing two selectmen from this evening's program because of work commitments. Mr. McCrisky and Mr. Cavey cannot be here. As a result, we will get as much done as we can tonight on the performance evaluation, but I believe the three of us agree that for completing the town manager's performance and evaluation and goals, we will have a full board, and I know both other members will watch the video of tonight's meeting, and they have access to the reports. That said, are there any citizens' requests or comments? Ms. Walsh.
Cynthia Walsh, 1096 Park Street. I was very pleased when I opened my water bill, not that it had gone up, but that this was enclosed with the collection information, the recycling information, and the trash policy on it, which I think was great. And probably, if you don't do this annually, then every other year. But I think the person that I request that you commend is that included the calendar so that folks would know when to put their trash out and when the holidays are, that the trash is not collected till the next day. Because as you go around town, sometimes people do put their trash down. I mean, trash day is Wednesday, you put your stuff out on Wednesday. And then some years it happens to be Veterans Day and your stuff is, you either bring it back in or you leave it out there, much to a missing selectman's chagrin. So whoever decided to add this deserves an attaboy or an attagirl. And it might be a good idea to do that part of it annually. It really does help folks, especially, I know I have two new neighbors, and it's very helpful for them to have this information.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else for citizens' requests? If it's all right with the board and the manager to get us closer to schedule, because we've got some hearings planned, I'd like to defer the town manager's report and selectmen's comments until later in the agenda, and invite Janice Bruce to give us a presentation. We all have your materials. Thank you for all you're doing.
Oh, good. Oh, thank you. Yes, I wanted to come before the board tonight to update you on Stoughton Public Health Association's 2019 annual evaluation and our policies, policy changes, and I submitted it for the consent agenda tonight. So I will try to make this kind of short and sweet. So the packet of information that I gave to you contains information about some of the things that have occurred with the agency the past year for the public health and visiting nurses. If you look through the packet, you'll see our annual evaluation for 2019, some events and programs that we have, policy changes, regulatory information, financial status, and some patient satisfaction reports. I think 2019 was an excellent year for the VNA. I'll just go over some key points. The past year, the Stoughton visiting nurses made 4,798 visits. That includes nursing, therapies, social work, home health aid, PT, OT, speech therapy. As we wait our DPH survey, we always get anxious, but we had it in June, and we did very well. We had 2 surveyors from the Department of Public Health come to our agency. They surveyed charts. They went on home visits to visit patients. They were very impressed. We passed with flying colors. They were very pleased with the uniqueness of our town agency. We're only one of 2 in Massachusetts owned by a town, and they really thought it was really special. And they were actually very happy with our electronic health system, which we have been on now for a year in July, and it's going really well. It was a big learning curve for us coming off of paper charting, but we're finally, gotten much used to it, and the amount of reports you can get and off of the electronic system has made it very valuable. Another area that we're really involved with is emergency planning, and that's for our patients as well as for the town. Being a VNA, we're also a public health department, so we have a lot of, for every patient that comes through, it's part of our regulation that we set up an emergency plan for them, and we talk emergency preparedness to find out what they would do in case of an event where they lost power, which, as we know, we had a few weeks ago. So we try to get them to think ahead of time, like who would they go with, what would they do, who would be able to shelter in place, and who may need to seek out a shelter. And of course, when we lost power 3 weeks ago, we actually set up a warming shelter here in this actual room, where we did have some very sick people show up. So that was a great thing to have this available, but also planning for the community. It was great that they were able to get those messages, and we keep encouraging people to sign in for the alert systems through the town. So that's one goal that we have. And as part of our DPH survey this year, they actually wanted to look at our emergency preparedness plans, and they actually sent out a separate surveyor to look at it, and they were very happy with what we're doing. And I'll mention, just as the public health piece, as you know, on the news, we all know what's aware of the coronavirus, so I just wanted to touch on that. The town has been actively staying abreast of all the current information. I met with the town manager the other day, and with Mark Tisdale and the chief and the fire chief and myself on a conference call. We have a Board of Health meeting this Thursday. With the schools will also be there, and we're going to just try to come up with a unified plan. It's ever-changing right now. I think the biggest thing is that people stay calm. Massachusetts is still at a low risk, and it's just really common sense kind of information that you would do just to prevent getting either spreading or getting a cold, and we just have to be more vigilant about it and take it more seriously. That would involve good hand washing. If you have a runny nose, and use a tissue, or cough, sneeze into a tissue, throw it away and then wash your hands. Good hand washing, not just a little rinse, but really wash your hands for like 20 seconds. Soap and water, really good friction. Don't go around people that are sick, and people that are sick shouldn't say, well, I think I'm gonna go to work anyway. It's like, if you've got a runny nose and you're really coughing, you should stay home, and then also seek medical attention if it really seems significant. Call your doctor first before going to an emergency room, just so they can advise you or be aware if you're really sick. You want to have them prepared. So those are some things we can do. We did post on the town's website the DPH fact sheet, which, as things change, we'll change the fact sheet. I can see already, I just got a text from somebody from our Council on Aging that showed something from Canton, with like a rumor that somebody over there had coronavirus, and it was false. So you're going to hear things you know, there's going to be a lot of information that could be misinformation, or people get nervous. There are a number of people in Massachusetts that are on home quarantine, on self-quarantine, because they may have been traveled recently. We did have someone in Stoughton that we followed for 14 days, and they were fine. And if there's somebody that's supposed to be quarantined, we get notified through our public health department to follow up with them. And I was able to follow up with this person, and we just kept in constant contact, and she knew what she was supposed to be doing, and she followed the rules, so. So that's kind of the public health piece that we're doing. As far as our other things with public health, we've been doing, we had our flu clinic this year. We gave out probably about 250 flu shots. We got our high-dose vaccine late this year, so a lot of people had already gotten it, so we do have some left over, but that was unusual. The high school is going to be our new emergency dispensing site, the new school, so we're actively working on plans to come up with a new flow of traffic, because we always had it at the old high school. So we did the clinic in the new high school, gave us a little preview of what we're going to be doing, and I'm working with the schools and different people in our emergency planning committee to come up with new plans for, in the event if we ever had to open up an emergency dispensing site. Let's see. Staffing-wise this year, we stayed the same. We did lose one wonderful staff member who had been with us for 20 years, who went to work as a liaison for a Boston hospital, and we miss her very much, but we quickly were able to replace that with a per diem nurse that we had that was doing weekends. So that staffing has not changed. We, along with regulatory changes, we underwent a Medicare probe and audit, which was not fun. They go over 20 records with a fine-tooth comb, and they try to deny charts. Right now, we're in the process of appealing 2 of them. I think we had a total of 4 denials we're appealing to, so hopefully we'll be able to recoup money on those. But it's just what Medicare does. It's just part of that whole process of making sure that your documentation is right, that your visits are reasonable and necessary, and all the regs are being met. The biggest change that's coming this year, that's just started in January, on January 1st, is Medicare has given us a brand-new payment system. I included it in your packet so you can have a little chance to read about it. It's called patient-driven grouping models. It's the biggest change in reimbursements for over, I don't think the last change was probably about 20 years ago. So this is significant. We're not sure exactly what it's going to mean for us. They've changed up the coding, so there's like a combination of 400 and something different ways you can get paid, so it's very hard to figure out, depending on the combination of diagnosis, severity, the coding, patient's functional level. So it all targets different things about a patient and what that means for their care. We're hoping to really get a good handle on it, but it's still almost too early to tell to see how our reimbursements are coming in. That being said, 2019, we actually came in very close to what we were the year before. Our revenues totaled from Medicare and our other insurances, $850,384. And our expenses, including salaries, was $776, which left us over all of our direct costs and our salaries in excess of $74,228 above operating costs. But of course, we have our indirect costs, so that we would probably have to dip into, so. So our goal for the coming year, I should mention one thing that I know regulation says, that you as our governing body have to know about our quality assurance performance improvement. Our goal has been to decrease hospitalizations. That's been our project, and I was very happy to see that we finally came in with our average below the Massachusetts average for rehospitalizations. Rehospitalizations are a very big part of the costs for insurances and ER visits, and through trying to work through self-management of diseases and education, and trying to get patients to be able to have a better handle on when they should seek medical attention before it becomes an emergency, is all the things that we've been working on. So I do see that we're moving in a good direction with that. Looking forward to next year, we want to work through that new PDGM, and we want to continue to get our referral sources, try to get a little more activity with our referral sources, to let them know who we are. Our patient satisfaction is excellent. The liaison and myself are meeting up at the Good Samaritan Hospital in a couple of weeks, just to let them know, remind them who we are, and that our patients, that they have a choice. We want our patients to ask for us if they're in the hospital, and hopefully the hospital is providing them with a list and that we're on it. So other than that, I think.
If I might jump in, I just want to thank Janice. I know last year when I heard this report, I was only a few months in, and I was amazed at the work that she does. I continue to be impressed with her dedication to her job, and as you all know, part of the proposed restructuring that we're getting ready to do, Janice becomes the Executive Director of Human Services, and anybody who follows her, looks at her work, certainly knows why. She continues to be an amazing asset to this town. The public absolutely loves her and trusts her, which in her role, I think, is probably maybe her greatest asset. So I want to thank Janice, and she's on top of the coronavirus thing. She knows I'm a germaphobe, and I want my mask. But she's doing a great job for us, and we will continue on the heels of that to update the public, because I think we collectively believe that putting information out and having an informed public is what we need to do. But again, I want to thank Janice. She's just does tremendous work for us.
Well, thank you for those kind words.
Your enthusiasm is infectious.
Oh, thank you. Oh, is that a nursing joke? Okay. With that, I think I'll let you get on to the rest of your people.
Thank you very much.
Janice, before you go, do you need a vote from us to adopt the policy changes?
If you could just, yes, I didn't even mention the policy. We adopted one new policy, and it's on actually infection control, about what to do if you go in a house and there is any kind of mites or bed bugs or anything like the pests in the home. That's our policy, because unfortunately, sometimes you can run into that. So we don't want people going home with them, and we don't want people bringing them to another house. So if you could just approve that policy.
Do we need to also vote the advanced directive policy, the patient assessment? and
Yeah, those
reassessment?
policy changes were just minor, because we just revised the wording a little bit, where they had, it was like just a little bit of word change just to meet the new regulations for
We should vote,
CMS.
we should vote those just to make sure, even though they're minor changes, that there isn't
Right.
an issue.
So I'll move to adopt the new pest control policy and the revisions to the advanced directives, healthcare proxy policy, the patient assessment and reassessment policy, and the annual program review policy for the Stoughton Public Health Association.
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That's unanimous, 3-0. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you so much.
We're happy to welcome members of the school committee, the superintendent, the director of facilities, Joyce Husseini, on the South School Statement of Interest.
You all have copies,
Yes.
so I'll have for the public there.
I'm having deja vu with this one.
Feel like I've been here before. Before we start, can I thank Janice Bruce publicly, and Chief Laracy, and all of the other members of the LEPC and the groups involved in the town who've been tremendous in working with us as we craft our response to the coronavirus. It is an ever-changing target. We sat in on Danielle Gallen, the Director of Health Services, and I sat in on the conference call with Public Health, we're looking forward, I hear to Governor Baker doing one for schools, he did one for colleges today, but it is ever-changing, and it's important that we have a unified response to the community now before it is serious or before it gets serious. So thank you.
I echo those sentiments. Thank you so much, Nurse Bruce. It's been great. You and Nurse Gallen have been fantastic partners, so thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come tonight. I'm Dr. John Marcus, Superintendent of Schools, and this is Mrs. Joyce Hussaini, Director of Facilities and Operations. I'm pleased to recognize in the audience Mrs. Sandra Gropey, the Chair of the School Committee, and Mrs. Katie Anokian, member of the School Committee, and also Mrs. Kathy Piatelli, the Business Manager for the School Department. We're here tonight to present the Statement of Interest to the Massachusetts School Building Authority for the core program for the South Elementary School under priority number 7, which reads, replacement of or addition to obsolete buildings in order to provide for a full range of programs consistent with state and approved local requirements. So we're here tonight to present this SOI, Statement of Interest, and talk a little bit about the genesis of this most recent iteration. A lot has changed since 2008, when the first SOI for South was presented. A lot of time has gone by, and at all levels, teaching and learning looks very different than even 12 years ago. With that in mind, we examined prior SOIs and adapted the current project for a contemporary elementary program. So we're hoping that tonight our SOI is available for you, that you've had a chance to look at it and see that it lays out the physical structural deficiencies of the South Elementary School. We've added significant detail to previous iterations, and our hope is that we're able to answer any questions that you have tonight and request the Select Board, using the specific language that you see on page 23, that you vote to approve this project.
I think we're all familiar with the needs of the South School and and the students that it serves. So thank you for all you're doing to
Absolutely.
keep pressing that that school get addressed, and the students who attend it have their, and the employees and the teachers who serve the public in there have the facility that they really deserve to have.
Thanks.
Do we get any feedback from the MSBA on why a project isn't selected?
We do not get formal feedback. You can call, it's not a formal debriefing, you can't quote. Really, at the end of it, what they will tell you is that the priority goes to schools that are overcrowded. So regardless of the condition of your school, the MSBA will not allow a town or a municipality to have overcrowding. And it goes to, so therefore it's a new field every year.
Sure.
And you're up against, new players, and it's the most need, but overcrowding being prioritized.
Can I jump in real quickly while I have Dr. Marcus sitting here and we're talking about South School? I just want to thank you and the principal at South School. I was invited to read today at South School for Reading Week, so
Oh, great.
just as an aside,
Excellent.
I want to thank you. It was a pleasure, and I did look around the building while I was there, trying to be there on a completely pleasant reading
Yeah.
visit, but I couldn't help but look around. But what a great group of students. And
Thank
so
you.
thank you to the principal and to you.
Thank you. I'll pass that along.
I appreciated it much.
What'd you read?
Are You My Mother? Which my mother used to read to me, which is
Yep.
why I picked it, so.
Well, I drew the short straw for reading the motion.
Can I just ask one more question?
Sure.
Clearly, the school is in need, and we've been submitting this for, I guess this will be 12 years now.
Yeah.
Is there another priority project that you would consider submitting, or if this continues to get rejected, or what's the approach?
This is absolutely the priority right now. So in the future, things may change, but there's no question that this has been the priority for the district for a while. And so our hope is that that we're selected, and at that point, that's when, as Mr. Sullivan asked, that's when we get more sort of specific feedback. So at that point, we may look at, how the construction is going to go, but for now, that's really our number one priority.
Yeah, I mean, it's just hard to imagine that other potential priorities, B, C, D, have improved over 12 years as well, so it's,
Correct.
I know some of this board's objectives is to make sure that all of our plans for capital projects kind of align together, and,
Well, and if I might add, I think that one of the critical parts with the South School is that the MSBA does, I think more recently than they did 12 years ago, look at the feasibility study as an opportunity to take a
Right.
bigger look at your needs, not just necessarily for that specific school. We do know that if something happened to the South School that was either catastrophic or we needed a large repair, remodel, that we would have to make it ADA compliant. And that is the one building that would be near impossible to do that without spending the same amount of money as it would to construct a new school. So with that said, we focus on it. Yeah, it is, you're right, it's not that the other buildings are not aging as well, although I will tell you that I inherited a really well-kept set of buildings. And while there are cosmetic things that we could do to improve every one of them, I think we're in great shape, for the most part, structurally, with buildings that will last a long time. This building, however, isn't, and for that reason, it will remain a top priority. Plus, we need to be able to respond to, should this building have to come out of stock at some point, what we would do. So, really the hopes is to get it in front of the MSBA and have them help us figure out kind of is it just a South School, or is it a longer, bigger picture as we look at the rest of the stock during the feasibility?
thank you.
Thanks.
I wish you luck.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, this is a bit wordy, so bear with me. So I'll move, resolved. Having convened in an open meeting on March 3rd, 2020, prior to the SOI submission closing date, the Select Board of Stoughton, Massachusetts, in accordance with its charter, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the Statement of Interest form dated March 31st, 2020, for the South Elementary School located at 171 Ash Street, Stoughton, Mass. 02072, which describes and explains the following deficiencies and the priority categories for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future. Priority 7, replacement of or addition to obsolete buildings in order to provide for a full range of programs consistent with state and approved local requirements. The current multi-level structure is old and suffers from aging systems, numerous water and cold air leaks, significant ADA accessibility issues, small classrooms with activity and storage limitations, and the inability to provide effective special education and English learner programs, and hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting this statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or the approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the MSBA, or commits the city, town, or regional school district to filing an application for funding with the MSBA.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing no discussion on the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No, that's unanimous, 3-0. Thank you.
very much. And we do have a signature, if we can get that. We can either do that now, or we can come back at another time.
Do that now when you move on to the next, or you
That's
move
all
on
right.
to the next round? I can do
Great,
that now?
thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Our next agenda item is an update on the Park Street Sewer Project. We've had 2 recent presentations, a very substantive overview of the project at the last meeting. This is scheduled for a public hearing on March 17th. The hearing will be to consider and address a betterment policy and a connection policy. Staff requested the chance to appear before the board tonight to give us an update. At the last meeting, we were advised that they continued to work on some of the numbers, and so Of course, when they asked, everyone's glad to have you here. I also asked the staff to put on our website the report that's being presented tonight, the report that was presented at the last meeting. We have a draft connection policy that's part of our materials for tonight that either is or will be on the town website. These are the materials that will be the subject of the public hearing on March 17th. So that having been said, welcome, Mr. Tisdale. And with all of those materials out there, if you want to just focus in on the revenue, the costs, and the recommendations that are coming from staff on the betterment and connection policies, so the public is informed of what our hearing will be about next week, that'll make a good use of everybody's time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, board members. Just to recap, we're here on the 18th, as Mr. O'Regan has mentioned. And we did a very detailed presentation at that meeting, as you all saw. We're not going to go through that again. At that meeting, we pretty much said we'd come back on the 3rd and talk about the sewer connection policy and the betterment policy options that we have on the table, so that we would have a better idea of what direction we're going on the 17th when you're having your public hearing. That's all we're going to focus on tonight. There's maybe 8 or 9 slides that we're going to go through. I can get that to work. You just use the keypad. Can you just use the arrow? Yeah. Okay, go to the next slide, please. All right, we'll start off with the good old project map, since that's always a good starting point. Just to keep it in everybody's mind exactly what properties we're talking about. The 73 total properties, the green properties on this map represent the properties for the sewer expansion project. There's 8,700 linear feet of gravity sewer, 4,200 linear feet of pressurized force main. There's one pump station that's proposed in Campanelli Industrial Park, and the construction cost is $7.3 million at this point. Next slide, please. We'll go through the details on this. This just shows you how the $7.3 million is broken down. We've been able to reduce that contingency down from 25% from previous estimates down to 20%, but there's still, as you can see, over $1 million in contingency at this point. Next slide, please. Just to recap the revenue portion of the project, there's 3 areas of revenue. You've got the water, you've got the sewer, and you've got the tax growth. In some situations, we may have other revenue, things to do with permitting fees, I&I fees, things of that nature. That's something we have not included in any analysis we've done. The water revenue would obviously increase proportionally with the sewer, with the growth in the industrial park. So obviously, when you get higher and better uses in the industrial park because of the sewer, you're going to have a tax growth because you're going to be able to, you have higher value to the properties. The sewer revenue you're going to get from day one when the sewer pipe's in. You're going to get the flow that's in the system right now that's going into the ground through septic systems, going into the sewage system right away from the day the connection happens. I think at the last meeting I explained to you that was roughly about $200,000 per year. So that's coming in no matter what. As soon as all the properties are connected, you get about $200,000 per year. And I think I previously explained to you that the average payment was somewhere around $500,000 without a grant. The mortgage payment, if you want to call it, was $500,000 without any kind of grants or things of that nature. So you're looking sort of at like a delta of about $300,000. The proposed draft sewer connection policy in front of you tonight allows for reliable projection of sewer revenues by defining the time frame for required connections, provides incentives for property owners to connect quickly by waiving the permit and I&I fees. So for example, if you're a commercial industrial property, if you connect within 1 year, you would get those fees waived. For a residential property, if you're connected within 3 years, you get those fees waived. The policies that we have in front of you allow for hardships. Obviously, there's unique situations that arise in people's lives every day. So they can come in front of you on a case-by-case scenario and with their hardship situation, whatever that may be. The policy ensures that sewer revenues will be collected even if the property does not connect within the required timeframes. And I'll get into that a little more later on. After 10, I'm sorry, I'm jumping around here. So after, the sewer policy revenues will be collected even if the property does not connect within the required timeframes. So for example, after 10 years, if a residential property did not connect, we're still going to bill them as if they're connected. So they have to, so we're getting that sewer revenue. So it gives them the incentive to connect. Why are you getting billed for sewer? That's in this current policy if you're not connected. That's proposed. That's something that the board can think about. You can change that around. Same thing for commercial properties. After 3 years, they would be getting billed for the connection.
Mark, sorry to interrupt, but of the 73 properties, how many are residential and how many are commercial?
That's a good question. A majority of them are commercial. I don't have the exact number for you. I think you bring up a good point. I could definitely. You got,
It's 22 commercial.
Okay, thanks, Ziad. 22 commercial properties, and the rest are all residential? Okay,
So
Thank you.
51, okay.
is that just, Ziad, do you know if that's by the zoning district or by the use on the property? This is by use. By the use on the property, okay. Thank you. The draft sewer connection policy, as the slide that's on the screen here, it's more of a chart form. Pretty much where we're going with this is sort of the recommended policy, and there would be a legal document to go along with this. I think it's important for the board to look at the bones and the framework of the policy first, kind of get the more important things nailed down, and then once you have that nailed down, kind of give council the authority to write up the legal document that you could eventually vote on one day. For this chart, the connection policy that we recommend at this point, which you've seen before, is broken down into residential and commercial. For residential, you're required to connect within 10 years, as we explained before. If you connect within 3 years, the permit fee and the I&I fee will be waived. You have things like hardships that they can come in front of you on. If a septic system had if a property had a new septic system within 5 years, so say like 2 years before that pipe went in, they put a new septic system, we would add 5 years to the 10-year connection period, so you get 15 years. There's exception overrides this. So obviously, if you have a failed cesspool, you have to connect. If there's sewer there, we have that policy in place now. This just formalizes it. If there's a transfer of property ownership and you have a failed septic system, obviously you would be required to connect at that point in time. If you had a use that was on the property and they were proposed to increase the use to the septic system and it would cause a failure, you would have to connect to sewer at that point in time. And obviously, if there was new construction on a lot, you would have to connect at that time. Sewer use charges will be assessed if the property owner does not connect within the timeframes above. So as we previously explained to you, if they do not connect, they're going to be assessed the fee of what the sewer charge would be. So it gives them the incentive to connect. The fees for the typical permit fees are $250, and the I&I fees for a typical single-family house are $330 per bedroom. So, for example, if they connected within those first 3 years for a house, they'd save about $1,200 on their permit fees. That would be a pretty good incentive in my mind. Commercial properties follow the same ideology. It's just the times are different. So if they connect within the first 3 years, they get the permit fee and the I&I fee waived. They also have the same hardship issues as the residential properties. It's the same exception overrides that we mentioned, and they will be assessed if the property owner does not connect within the time frame above. Next slide. So that was the sewer connection policy. That explains the framework of that. That's a completely different policy than the betterment policy. If the board decided not to assess betterments, then there's no betterment policy, obviously. But there could still be a sewer connection policy. So there's two separate policies here. But they're very important when we move on through this process to kind of nail these down, because most of the questions being asked to us are, well, how much is it going to cost me? and when am I supposed to connect, things of that nature, money-related things. And right now, we can't give anybody an answer to those questions. So the draft betterment policy. We're pretty much basing this betterment policy on what we think makes sense for this area based on the Title V flows. Typically, in the past, when you have like a residential subdivision, 20 or 30 lots, all the same type of use, all houses on a road, you use the frontage and unit method. So you assess them per frontage, an area, and everybody gets roughly the same betterment. It's very close. In this situation, when you got a mixture of uses, we feel that it's a better idea to do flow-based. So the more flow you put into the sewer pipe, the larger your betterment is. And in order to kind of formalize that, you have to equate what the base unit would be, right? You got to start from the ground. Base unit on this policy in front of you is a single-family house. And a single-family house by Title V, which is the state environmental code, would be designed with 330 gallons per day. It's 110 gallons per day per bedroom. So it's a 3-bedroom house. So the way to calculate the equivalent unit would be the total project cost divided by the total number of equivalent units for the whole project. The betterment would equal the number of equivalent units times the cost per unit. When you go through this, there's 4 types of situations that occur, right? You have properties that have residential units on them now, right? So residential developed properties. You have commercial developed properties. You have non-developed residential properties and non-developed commercial properties, right? So you have a vacant piece of land that would be commercially zoned. That would be with nothing on it. That would be non-developed. Same thing with a vacant house lot. So you have to draft a betterment policy that attacks any possible option. Those are the 4 options. The simple one would be residential developed. If somebody has a single-family house on it, you get 1 unit. You have a triplex with 3 units on the property, you get 3 units. Very simple. The next most simple situation would be a non-residential developed property. There's a use on that property. You know how much flow they're utilizing right now. So for example, you have a warehouse building. You look at the water use records for the last 3 years, you do an average, and you say, well, we know you're using 1,000 gallons per month or per day, whatever it equates to. You take that flow, you divide it by the base unit, which is 330 gallons per unit. That's your equivalent unit and your cost. For the other 2 situations of undeveloped properties, residential undeveloped properties would be probably the next one I want to talk about. Residential undeveloped properties would follow the table of dimensional and density regulations to convert to a lot number of dwelling units. So for example, if you had a big property that had 1,000 feet of frontage, a lot of acreage on the property, we know how many frontage lots you can get, how many A&R lots they call them, that they're lots that don't have to go through subdivision approval. We know how many you can get based on the area and the frontage, and we can assess you the number of units right away. Based on GIS data, we have a lot of information on wetlands and things like that, and with the experience in our engineering staff, we can kind of tell how many units, how many frontage lots you can get. In the policy, the final written policy, obviously we would want something that would come in, if somebody disagreed with our analysis, they should be able to come to your board and say, well, this is the reason, we've hired an engineer, we think Craig and Mark did a great job, but they're wrong on one lot. We want to come back to your board and discuss why we think it should be 1 less lot, because there's a wetland over here the town didn't have on record, yada, yada, yada. For the non-residential undeveloped lot, this is where it takes a little more effort for us, unfortunately. Because we have to kind of estimate what could go on that commercial property. So we would literally have to take our best available information in the town, do a little sketch with the required parking in the building, kind of like what you've seen a lot of plans for, like projects like the public safety building, come up with a little plan for the lot and assess what we think the betterment would be for the potential building area on that lot. Again, there would be something in place in this policy where the applicant could come in and say, listen, you just put too much square footage on my building. I really can't get that for this reason, or I don't want to do it for this reason. Things like that. That would be in, the details of that would be in the policy. Next slide. We also feel, and actually reaching out to our consultants, and they've looked at other towns, typically what happens too is you have all the people abutting the roadway where the sewer line was installed. They obviously better by that sewer line, but then you've got the smart developers in town that kind of wait for the sewer line to go by, and then they buy the properties in back of those properties that wouldn't actually get a betterment because they don't front the road where the sewer pipe is. So there's something that's very common in this field. It's called a sewer privilege fee. So if, for example, you look at number 1 up there, number 1 is a big piece of land. It's landlocked currently, not really valuable until you can connect the sewer or get frontage somehow. So, if I was a developer, and sewer went by on that road, I'd look at buying one of those brown lots so I can get access to that green lot. All of a sudden, I've got access, I got frontage, I have enough room to put a road in, and then I can extend the sewer from where the sewer is into that green area and get my 10, 15, 20 lots, whatever it ends up being. Since they're connecting to that sewer and bettering, if you want to call it, bettering from that sewer being there, they should be assessed some sort of fee in my mind. Maybe not the total fee because they're going to have a lot of costs in extending that infrastructure to their property. So they're going to be paying, a lot of money up front to extend that sewer line. So we're recommending a 50% sewer betterment assessment for those back lot situations. And that number can be obviously kicked around a little bit. I just think it's a fair number. It's pretty common for a situation like this. Case 2. Case 2 is more of it's a case where we account for case 2 in our I&I fees. So when somebody comes in and say they got a warehouse building, and then they're going to increase it to an office building or something like that, we assess an I&I fee based on the delta, the increased use of flow. So if their office building is going to now generate 2,000 gallons per day compared to the warehouse that was there 1,000 gallons per day, we look at the delta of the two of those and say there's an extra 1,000 gallons per day, we're going to charge you an I&I fee based on that. We do the same thing for like if a house puts an addition, a 1-bedroom addition on, you pay an I&I fee based on just the addition. That's happening right now. So that's not a change, or we're not really adding that to this, but to make this presentation complete, I think we need to mention it. Next slide, please. So in summary, for this project, we have 88 equivalent units. And if the board decided to do, this is where we just wanted to give the board an option of where you could go with this in a range. If you chose to do something like 25% betterments, the cost at the numbers right now, a single equivalent unit would be $9,600 roughly. So one house, a 3-bedroom house would be $9,600. If you assessed 100% betterments, that 3-bedroom house would be $38,000. So it's obviously a big difference. I think Christine mentioned at the last meeting, like what would be the other costs associated with this type of, when you're connecting the sewer versus septic. So when you're connecting the sewer, that $38,000 for the 100% betterments would get you to the property line. So from the street where the main is to the property line, and you'd have to hire a contractor to connect the sewer line from your house to the road and abandon your septic system that you have on your property. Depending on how far away from the road your house is, that cost can vary. Obviously, if you're 300 feet off the road, it can be a substantial cost. But generally, most of these properties are pretty close to the frontage of the road, probably 50 to 100 feet or closer. And you're probably looking at somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000. So, add that to that cost. And then they'll also be getting a quarterly sewer bill, that they didn't have previously. So that's kind of the cost associated with it. If you're going to repair a septic system in this area, again, it's a case-by-case scenario. You cannot just say one price for a septic system. But generally speaking, you have small lots. For residential lots, you're going to get a septic system in the range of $20,000 to $40,000 in that range. On average, $30,000. It could be more. It depends what your situation is. So I think the base, when you look at this, in my mind, the board might think, maybe the 25% betterments are the way to go. We don't want to burden the residential people too much. But this but you should know it's not gonna just cost them $9,600, it's gonna cost them another probably $10,000 on top of it, so when you're going through the math. If anything to add on that, Craig?
No.
No, all right. One key point to this is these numbers are based on the numbers we have calculated now for the project cost. Generally speaking, and we hope this is true, the costs go down as you design further. So that contingency should go down, things should go down as we further this. So these numbers should drop over time. This should be the maximum number we would see over time.
And these calculations don't include any award of the grant, so the MassWorks grant that we're chasing after, that's not factored into this number that you see now, so that would bring it down as well.
Right, that's a good point, yeah. And again, like, when you're thinking about all these things, like, I'm not gonna go through the old presentation, but we were very conservative on our analysis with tax growth and things of that nature, so. Our whole analysis here is very conservative, and it's, I guess, from an engineering standpoint, that's how we're born and bred. We like to sort of be conservative.
Factor
We don't want to
safety.
promise you every grant possible, and then we don't get the grants and we don't look good. So I'd rather have you make the decision based on no grants, and if it's a good project with no grants, then we move forward from that point, you know. The next slide, and the last slide, is pretty much just a summary of if we got a $1.5 million MassWorks grant versus a no grant situation, and what the betterments would be for 25%, 50%, and 100%. It just shows you the range of the actual betterments calculated for this project.
And these are the commercial and retail, commercial and industrial properties.
Yeah, correct. And that's it, I believe.
Well, thank you very much. Any questions?
Have we started the process of applying for the MassWorks program?
To apply for the MassWorks program, you gotta have fully designed plans. So, of substantially designed plans. So we're actually in the process of surveying right now. We've got the wetlands flagged, so we've got preliminary design plans done. We're collecting the information. Within the next 2 to 3 months, we should have higher level plans prepared. So we're expecting to apply for the MassWorks grant at the end of this year. I believe it's August or so. I think Christine's pretty good with the dates on that, but. Right.
They're all starting to blur together. So.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah, August, September, I think is when you can apply for it. So we think we'll have pretty good plans at that point that we can apply for the grant.
And have we briefed our legislators on the project to see if they can help us out? I know
We've
that-
had some conversations, yeah.
Okay.
There's an infrastructure and a transportation bill.
Yeah.
People are throwing amendments on it right now, left and right.
Yeah,
They're
Well-
not sticking, but.
yeah, I
they're
know,
still
I know.
trying.
That's what I'm saying. I mean, like, you get these amendments and they kind of, the difference between real money and fake money. And I don't really like to get into that kind of thing. I like to kind of look at the hard numbers with no grants and make decisions based on that. And if we get these grants, it's kind of like the gravy on top, you know?
Can you just quickly explain how betterments are paid? So like if my property gets assessed a $10,000 betterment, do I have like a 10, 20, 30-year period
Yeah.
to pay that off? And does it get tacked onto my sewer bill? Does it get tacked
Yeah.
onto my property taxes?
I believe it gets tacked onto your sewer bill, and it's over 20 years.
Right.
So, I mean, if you had a $10,000 betterment over 20 years, what does that come out to be?
$500.
So rely on those calculators these days, right? So, what is it, $500 per year roughly? Am I doing that math
Yeah,
right?
plus
Yeah.
interest.
And is it
So it's-
typical for banks to offer sort of loans for people for that? or-
We do have a septic betterment program in town that offers low-interest loans. Every 3 years, we usually take out about a $400,000 article. It's a reimbursable article. I mean, the town doesn't pay for it. We just offer the program to the residents of Stoughton. It's utilized very heavily. We also could apply for the SRF loans for this project, which we think is going to be a huge benefit. When we did the analysis, you could see the price drop from about $500,000 to $400,000. If you went from a 4% interest rate, according to Bill Rowe, is what we could get roughly now, to a 2% interest rate with the SRF loans. That's huge. I mean, that's kind of bigger than any grant you can get in this
So
project.
Are we going to do that?
Yeah, we are going to apply for that. Again, we don't know if we're going to get it. So you get the MassWorks grant, you get the SRF loan grant, low-interest loan you can get. Housing Choice Initiative grant, I'm pretty sure we can get that. Easton, just Five Corners Sewer Project just got it. Tons of projects get it, but that's in about the $2 to $250 range, $250,000 range. So you got all these little pots you can pluck from. So I feel that, we're going to get something. I just don't know which ones we're gonna get at this point. It's just too early on to project that.
If we assess a betterment, can we assess it on a percentage of the project, or does it have to be assessed at a certain dollar value? Because it sounds like we're gonna be implementing a betterment policy and going for the construction funding before we know about potential grant money.
Looks like it's a percent.
What's
It's a
that?
per-
It's in this, it's,
It's like the policy would be 1%, and then the
it is a
actual
percent.
figure would be based on what the costs are.
Okay.
Exactly. The final, so these are all estimates until that final pipe gets installed and we get the final invoice from the contractor, and then we calculate the final betterments at that point.
Okay.
Yeah, so you would be deciding percentages.
Okay.
Yep.
And I think you guys touched upon it, but again, real quick, the 330 gallons per day, that's just an average or like a median?
That's a standard flow, design flow from the State Environmental Code Title V for a 3-bedroom house. So if you were gonna design a septic system, you would design a septic system that, 330 gallons per day.
Okay.
Thank you. Anything else? Very well, we'll see you back in a couple of weeks. Thank you
Okay.
very much for all your work.
Thank you.
Our next item is a public hearing on the cable television license for Comcast. So folks understand what this is. Every 10 years, the operators of the cable systems in Stoughton have to apply for a license. In this case, the Comcast provider's license is up for renewal. Notice was published and we are required to have a public hearing. The notice was published on February 19th and 26th. It read, "Please take notice that the Board of Selectmen of the Town of Stoughton, Massachusetts, as issuing authority for a cable television license under Mass General Laws, Chapter 166A, will hold a public hearing on March 3, 2020 at 8:15 p.m. The public hearing will be held in the Great Hall, 3rd floor at Stoughton Town Hall, 10 Pearl Street, Stoughton, Massachusetts. The purpose of the hearing will be to determine whether to issue a cable television license to Comcast. All applications, reports, statements, license drafts to be considered at the hearing that constitute public records under the state law are available for public inspection during regular business hours and for reproduction at a reasonable fee. Members of the public are invited to attend and be heard on the topic: A, whether the current cable operator is in full compliance with the currently existing cable license, and B, what are the town's future community cable-related needs? Again, that was published February 19 and 26, 2020. Is there a motion to open the public hearing?
So made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No, so I declare the public hearing open. Are there any members of the public who wish to be heard on whether the current cable operator, Comcast, is in full compliance with its currently existing cable license, or what the town's future community cable-related needs may be? Ms. Walsh?
Cynthia Walsh, 1096 Park Street. I don't have a copy of the license, although I probably do in the archives at home. Somewhere, it must cover the adaptive devices that are supposed to be available to the public. And they frequently are not. Or they don't have batteries. And there's been a couple of meetings when they haven't had a single one that worked. And I'm not the only one that has asked to use one. So somewhere in that ream of papers, there must be something about at public meetings that they're taping or broadcasting live that they're supposed to have adaptive devices for the public. And I just want it noted that they don't.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, I see no one having called this twice in addition to Ms. Walsh. Is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So made.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? That's unanimous, so I declare the public hearing for the cable television license for Comcast under Chapter 166A of the general laws is now closed. Next item is a Class II license application for Prestige Motors at 1873 Washington Street. This is a Class II automobile license application. Our practice is to assign license applications to a particular member of the board to do advanced screening. Mr. McCrisky drew the short straw on this one, and he's not here. So we'll do it the old-fashioned way, and I'll ask you, if you would, to identify yourselves and tell us what you're applying for and why.
Alex Rudy, 1873 Washington Street.
Can you press the little button, make sure the light's green.
Alex Rudy,
There you
1873 Washington Street. I operate and operated in the past several car dealerships. I currently have a car dealership in Malden. My corporations were in good standing, and I'm applying to get a Class II license at 1873 Washington Street in Stoughton, with the best intentions.
Okay. Turn on your microphone, please.
Didn't work. Hamed Pishtadian, 158 East Main Street, Norton, Mass. And I and my partner, David Kazume, we're the owners of the property. I'd like to mention that I have personally visited his business in Boston, in Malden. It is a very good standing, nice operation, prestigious business as the name of his business. And he has a lot of satisfied customers. And I've spoken to the chief of police, his assistant, and I spoke to the fire department inspectors, and he visited the property, and we have the property monitored by the central alarm. And also I had conversation with the Board of Health, and they informed me that there's now a pumping station for the sewage, which we agreed, and we would like to connect to it within the next 3 months. But we had conversations, and he agreed to permit Mr. Rudy to start his business, and we will do it within the next 3 months. Thank you.
All right, so we have correspondence.
Have you had a
Go ahead.
discussion, sorry to interrupt.
No, please go.
Have you had discussions with the property owner on upgrades to the cesspool on site?
I am the property owner, and we have an agreement with a construction company. It's actually called Sabatino's Construction out of Norton, and he will contact. He is in process to see the project, how it should be going by to connect to the sewer system and to the town sewage system, and this way we eliminate the old sewage system.
Okay, very
Which
good.
is aging.
And you're aware of the location of this, Mr. Rudy, and any potential effects it might have on where you're gonna be storing and advertising
Of
your
course.
vehicles?
Of course. Yeah.
Okay. Very good.
So Mr. Sullivan touched on the issues with the septic system. There are no taxes outstanding. The police department had a question that I see was related to the prior owner, and that's been, or the prior operator, and that's been addressed. The fire department has an issue with a garage bay indicating, though, that you would be using a different bay from the one, are you aware of the fire department's concern about one of the garage bays?
I'm not aware of it, because when he was there, he mentioned the issue that he had, and he also told us to put a lock on the exterior gate at night. That was the only thing he mentioned. He did inspect the property, the building, and he did speak. We triggered the alarm and spoke to the central alarm system.
Right, so,
He didn't mention any concerns. That's why he did his last okay, so we can go ahead.
He mentioned in his report some inoperable emergency lighting, and that it was currently lacking portable fire extinguishers. Have those been addressed?
Yes, you're right. He did mention a battery of one of the emergency lights that had to be addressed, and that was it.
anything else from anybody? Ms. Howe?
No.
Is there a motion?
Yeah, I'll move to approve of the Class 2 license for Prestige Motors located at 1873 Washington Street, contingent on the follow-up inspection by the fire department to make sure that the emergency lighting and the fire extinguishers have been addressed.
So can I rephrase it so that the application is approved and the license to issue upon certification by the fire department that the emergency lighting is operable and they're satisfied with fire extinguishers?
Yours sounds better, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, that's right.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? On the motion, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? None? There you go. When do you open?
As soon as the certification is done, sir. As soon as
Yeah.
the
As
soon as
certification.
we
by the
have
fire
the
department.
license.
Good.
answer.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thank
Thank you for investing in our
Appreciate it.
town.
Thank you.
The next item is an application to change manager at Club Louis de Camouche at 410 Morton Street. Anybody here for that application? This is a routine application, Mr. Sullivan?
Yeah, there were no issues on this application from any of the departments, so if there's no questions, I'll make a motion.
Sure.
I'll move to approve of the change in manager for Club Louise de Camouche at 410 Morton Street.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No, so that motion's allowed. With the board's permission, I would like to move ahead to the next item. We have Mary Beth Bernard here, who has consulted with the board. I'll do that after we do Mary Beth. Who assisted us with the town manager's evaluation, so I'd like, thank you for being so patient.
Thank you. Spent many years sitting in these types of meetings. Brought back memories.
I could see you aging as you were sitting. Well, thank you. It's been a pleasure to work with you. The background for members of the public is that at the significant effort of Selectman Cavey, Selectwoman Howe, and Vice Chairman Sullivan, a series of interviews were conducted of staff, and the board authorized the engagement of yourself to perform an interview of the town manager. The purpose of these interviews was to provide a 360 performance evaluation of the town manager. And I'll just use my shorthand, and if someone disagrees or has a different way, because our goal is to have everybody succeed. And a way to have everybody succeed is that we all understand what it is we want to accomplish, how we want to accomplish, and then periodically check and see where we are and adjust our course accordingly. And you were great to help us with that. So the public understands a reason for the board to invite you to participate was that so these interviews, particularly with the manager, would be conducted independently of the people the manager reports to. So we would get a good, robust report back, and members of the public who are here and members of the public who are watching would understand the commitment that we all share to have everybody succeed, and that includes providing the manager with the kind of feedback she needs in her dedication to serve the town. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and you did a great job of introducing what a 360 performance evaluation feedback would be. It's interviewing the stakeholders and analyzing the feedback, and it's basically to set goals around leadership development. You know, it's a roadmap for future success for everyone. So I did have the pleasure to review the information that each of you so diligently requested. There were 9 interview questions that were asked of the multiple department heads, et cetera. I summarized those for you. I can touch upon some of the key elements
yeah.
if you'd like. And then it culminated with an interview with the town manager. We've done it in person and by phone, and sort of to round out the entire process. So if I will just give you a quick summary. The first item was, is it a healthy work environment here in the town of Stoughton? And I'll give you some of the key highlights that people have commented. That town hall is a comfortable work environment. Some people do feel understaffed. That adds a little pressure. This town manager is categorized as a strong leader and accessible to all, not a micromanager. Staff feel that they have an autonomous relationship where they're empowered to do their jobs. And overall, people have felt that morale has improved with the town manager, you know, creating this healthy work environment. The second question was around availability. The most noted that the town manager was very available, accessible to them, even if they weren't in that specific group that meets weekly. And they felt that they would, if they needed to have a meeting, they could. They categorized the town manager as a worker or a workhorse, always working. Some people who were in the weekly staff meetings commented that they wish the meetings weren't every week. Sometimes they felt too frequent. But everybody really agreed that having those weekly meetings created a team effort, and the town manager constantly repeats the concept of team. That was the availability section. They also felt that they were not being, sorry, I lost my place, that they were being treated, you know, given FaceTime when they needed it. The next section was clarity in work assignments, things being done fairly, you know, the workload, all of that. And people felt that it was an absolute that the town manager is clear and fair about the assignment of tasks. They feel she works for the whole town, is a straight shooter, not aggressive, but really assertive, and that they understand their tasks. Never, ever would it be a wishy-washy kind of situation. There was, as always, a minority who felt that their departments weren't seen as a top priority. And some had some confusion still around the budget process and where they or the departments fit in. Most people did, however, feel that they got clear direction and felt that others didn't feel like they understood the whole vision, how they fit in. So that one was kind of all over the place. Fostering morale, again, almost in every category they mentioned the reinforcement of the team concept. And one person commented that some negative morale existed at the onset of the new town manager taking hold, but they felt that was the underlying concept was people accepting change, and that's why. People have commented that the town manager is consistent in her approach, she's straightforward, and that is inspiring confidence. One of the comments that came in a couple of different times was that they would hope the town manager would get around to the other locations. Again, this survey was done in October. It's probably been happening, but they felt that the town manager, they would like to see her get around to the other locations a little more as well. Overall, morale, people feel that it has improved significantly. There was someone who commented that they didn't feel encouraged or motivated, felt excluded, and again, the whole idea of having change did drive some people to leave. The next category is approachability. So even though some people don't have frequent interactions with the manager outside of these staff meetings, they did feel that she has a great work ethic and is approachable, readily available. Comments like that were repeated constantly. Under the concept of team building, again, that's a really strong theme throughout this whole process. Encouraging open communication, a good facilitator of group discussions, open and honest. Some people feel the same level of attention might not be trickling beyond the department heads, and again, encourage the town manager to get around to some of the other buildings. And some people said that there was already a lot of collaboration that existed before. The next one was conflict resolution, and again, the reports are the common message of team. Conflicts are addressed not necessarily in a group, doing them offline, which is probably the best way to do it. They know where to go when they have a conflict. Some people were unclear on whether there was a conflict and how to handle it, or that things had to be done through litigation or whatever. So there was a comment that if the town manager's authority was questioned, someone said that she loses her temper quickly. But most felt cohesion is stronger with the resolution of some of the conflicts that had existed. Things are not being swept under the rug. One staff person expressed the desire for the town manager to be more empowered and the Board of Selectmen to not micromanage. But overall, that was a very favorable response to conflict resolution. The next category was leveraging the strength of others. Do people feel their strengths are being recognized? Many noted the department changes, the reorganization stuff that the town manager's doing with the Council on Aging and the Developmental Services Division. People feel that the town manager has confidence in them to do their jobs. They felt trusted to do that. She knows they're working hard. Some felt recognized, but weren't sure she was utilizing their strengths. But overall, the employees feel that the town manager does a good job of recognizing and utilizing the strengths of others. And the last category was, I commend whoever created these questions, that using the word tribalism. Preventing tribalism, meaning are there factions, divisions, favoritism? And this I thought was a wonderful question, and there wasn't a strong sentiment about this. They felt that there are strong feelings within town hall and town government. A few people thought it seems to be getting better if it existed. And they went back to the whole open communication is very encouraged. Some people felt tribalism still existed in the budgeting process. some felt, you know, a lot of specific issues were addressed. You know, how contract negotiations were consulted. But most people felt they were not undermined, no preferential treatment was noted, and it appears the town manager has made some headway in this area. There was another category, kind of other, and I think these summarize what the 360 feedback has shown. That the town manager's been consistent since day one, tells it like it is assertive. Some people are obstructionists no matter what the circumstance is, so they feel that if there's always going to be employees who don't agree, but most express positivity, happy to come to work, best manager they've ever had in their career, appreciate her approach. She runs the town like a business. She's serious and down to business, but a friendly person who can talk to anyone. Again, they mentioned staff meetings, but one person feared that maybe the town manager is inflexible. If you don't like it, you can leave kind of mentality. But overall, it was a very positive communication, strong leadership, 360 feedback. Were there any questions on that section? No, okay. So I did conduct an interview, very lovely conversation in January, and then we followed up by phone with Robin, and she shared with me a 2-page document of all of her accomplishments, which, you know, I just highlighted a couple in my report, but narrowing a $5 million budget gap to $1.2 million in the first 5 weeks of her role, restructuring the town government to save, you know, by utilizing positions in a more creative way, saving over $200,000 in salary and benefits, negotiating union contracts with really looking at sustainable pay plans, creating a social media presence for public outreach and communication. Her Open Door Thursdays were a great concept. Created Stoughton's first 5-year capital budget, and then working closely not just internally with the departments, but looking at state, county officials, other communities on areas that are important to Stoughton. The 360 feedback itself garnered some confusion at first, I think. Department heads weren't sure why they were being surveyed. And I think there was a little bit of confusion, it seemed, but after town manager was able to discuss with them, and I think the selectmen who did some of the surveying, it appeared that people really did understand that this was information gathering for the purpose of goal setting. And I think, you know, people were less concerned and more open to communicate after understanding that. And I got a really good sense of the town manager's strategic goals. She says that she strives for a one-team mentality with the staff, and that was clearly evident in the 360 feedback. Her outreach to the community, you know, I did a little exploring and just looking at the Facebook page and the town's website, how welcoming it is, and then that open door policy. Those are all, I think, really great efforts. Focusing on the downtown redevelopment was a huge discussion point for us. We talked about that for a really long time, trying to keep the fabric of the community intact while, you know, making necessary changes. And she really valued her executive management team or her staff that she meets with, so she's able to convey one message when she's meeting with everybody. It really cuts down that whole rumor control piece of things. You know, whether it's budget priorities they're talking about, day-to-day operations, information sharing, strategic planning, it seems those meetings have really served a purpose, and people really do feel like they're on the team. And continuing to seek opportunities for restructuring of the organization. Just sitting here tonight, hearing about the human services position that you created, these are all concepts that other towns, I do a lot of consulting and I've worked in a few towns myself. These are kind of things people strive for. In most municipalities, we have an opening and, we fill the round hole with the round peg. If this job's open, let's post it. But it really makes good sense to look at it and see if you can restructure things and reorganize and have some economies of scale. So I think the strategic goals are really striving for optimal productivity, and it seems that they're being realized. That was, collecting and analyzing data is fun, but actually talking to people like yourself and the town manager were really the highlights of this project. I feel like you're on a wonderful track for moving forward to get some insight and develop a plan. I made some recommendations for goals that you may want to consider based on the feedback, and don't know if you want me to go through, touch on those? Okay, great. So my recommendation is that the board and the town manager should engage in a goal-setting meeting prior to the start of the next year. But it sounds like you did that in executive session maybe today. I think that, determining the townwide objectives using this report will give you some insight. One of the things I heard were that people who are not department heads were not feeling heard in some cases, so I suggested that the town manager conduct some skip-level interviews with her non-management staff to get some feedback, open the lines of communication. Those really work. It's kind of a private sector concept, but it works well in municipal government as well. Sometimes we're in a paramilitary structure. You don't think you can talk to someone who's not at the, you think you're supposed to go up to the next line of chain of command, but for a town manager to reach out to someone who's aligned staff and get their feedback is really a great morale booster, and you do get some good ideas. Perhaps explore the development of cross-functional teams, so you get some of your mid-level managers and line employees to feel like they belong, but also it develops your bench strength for the next generation of leaders. And we're having a real tough time in municipal government trying to groom the next managers. I also felt that I know you have a human resources department, but the role of a human resources director would be really crucial here to centralize some of the functions, ensure some of the things. The world has become very complex in HR. The ongoing compliance with policies and someone to make sure that the collective bargaining agreements are being managed in after you spend so much time negotiating them, making sure someone understands and carries out the terms of that, also as a resource to the managers and employees. And it would free up the town manager's time to be more strategic. In fact, I'll leave with you today, the Mass Municipal Association did a best practice in 2019 on a recommendation for communities to hire a human resources professional. The terms and things around, in private industry, the rule of thumb is for every 100 employees, you should have one full-time HR professional. And there are some towns who have more than that and don't even have an HR department. So MMA took a stand last year and created a best practice. I'll share that with you. One of the strong discussions that we had was about downtown and the passion for visioning, talking about the fabric of the community and developing the downtown. So I suggested some downtown visioning sessions. I've seen them work in other towns with a cross-functional group of staff, having the elected and appointed officials as part of that, downtown businesses and residents to, kind of get the feel for what people are looking for, but have the town manager drive that process. Her passion, I think, would bring you, along quite well with that. One of the other things that I considered, because I saw some consternation around budget, was to create maybe a townwide budget workshop. One of the towns I worked in, we did like a Finance 101 with all the finance committee, school committee, any board and committee that was interested, as well as residents, and just sort of walk through the whole financial thing, put it on cable. People really learned a lot about the municipal budgeting process. And I thought that might help to outline, and we found while we were doing collective bargaining that, police and fire were watching the video too to see what we were saying about the budget outlook. One of the other suggestions would be to continue to align the organizational structure with your strategy. Keeping people involved in why are we making these, new departments, new positions, how can you play a role, fostering some morale and enthusiasm around that. Another suggestion would be to provide some on-site training in conflict resolution, respectful workplace, so whenever there's a change in there, people might act out or feel defensive or, threaten to leave. So having some open discussion and having a professional facilitator, or maybe if you had an HR director, to be able to learn these conflict resolution strategies. I don't think there's a lot of conflict, but every community has it. And then once you go through this whole goal process, create some measurements, how you're going to check in, how you're going to demonstrate success and achievement, and then repeat the process every year or so. These are just a few suggestions. I think that you're well on your way to success with these goals, but I'm happy to answer any questions. This was a draft document. If you had any feedback, I'll compile it and put it into a final document.
Anything?
No, I mean, thank you for doing this with us. When we initially kind of kicked off this process, I think we thought it was going to be a small thing that kind of grew into a bigger thing as we decided what we wanted to do, and that was ultimately the 360 review. And so as a board, we worked together to come up with these questions and then conduct our one-on-one interviews with the staff, which we wanted to make clear to them that the information was going to be confidential and anonymous, so that we could try to get the most transparent responses from the staff, and reiterate that in sort of a summary format that complied with all the open meeting law requirements. And so that's sort of the product that you saw in our summary write-ups. But I mean, personally, as a member of the board, I thought it was a really valuable exercise to go through. I hope if we do it again next year, it doesn't take as long. Hopefully, I have a shell here. But it's great to see the feedback all laid out in one comprehensive place, and to see the feedback that came from your interview with the manager, and the subsequent recommendations, which I think this board is committed to pursuing and working with the manager to pursue. So just wanted to thank you for that.
That's great. Well, thank you. It was a great opportunity, and I commend you. These were great questions that you came up with.
Have you been involved with other performance review for municipal sort of executive level? What does that look
Yes.
like compared to how we did it? I'm curious for feedback for sort of how we conducted this whole, I mean, we already had a chance to talk to the town manager about the process and kind of get the feedback that you noted about department heads not really understanding what we were doing
Right.
initially.
Yeah.
But this whole process that we undertook, I mean, what, do you have any feedback on it generally?
In my experience, I've, worked in many communities, but I've also been doing some consulting as well on these types. And you're really the first ones to, in a public session, use your 360 feedback. A lot of managers use it personally in their development. I've participated on every end of a 360 feedback. A lot of people, to become a credentialed manager under ICMA, need to do a 360. So you see it happening in communities, but I've not seen it in a public goal-setting way. And I think this is a great trend. You're starting a great trend. So.
We've been accused of being trendsetters before, but On a positive side, it's a good thing to hear.
It is. I think it's a healthy thing, and I think the manager embraced the concept, and, you know, we had some great discussions around it, and I think you're well on your way for, you know, success with goal setting, and this is a great way to get buy-in from the hardworking department heads, is to have asked their feedback, and then they see that it goes somewhere and something happens with it, whether their goals or they're just acknowledged for their feelings. I think it's a win-win situation.
Very good, and I think also, you know, Selectman Cavey and Selectman Howe both assembled the list of questions, and I think that they deserve some praise for
Absolutely.
the way that they went about preparing those questions and the way
Yeah.
that it was able to drive down into the results, so.
They
Good job,
were
Christine.
some of the best questions I've seen. I think you did a great job, you know, making them reflect your community. And as I said, if you have any feedback on the report, I'll deliver you a final version after I hear that, and if you have it in the next few days.
So for the community is aware, we'll post the final report on our website. Generally speaking, I think the manager agrees with this. You can say you don't if you don't, but it's important, and your report to us, I think, has helped reinforce. It's important for everyone in the community to understand the manager works for all of us. And the manager's dedicated to have the town succeed. And that on the Board of Selectmen's viewpoint, our overarching goal is to make sure that the public has confidence in how our town government is running. And that we welcome the opportunity, which is really when the suggestion was made by Christine Howe, let's do a 360. It was so that we can reinforce this notion that we need to have confidence in our town government. So thank you for helping us with that.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. Thank you. And feel free, maybe through the chair, you'll send me any comments or
Sure.
feedback. All right.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good night.
And back to the agenda, item 9, utility pole application for National Grid Verizon, a new JO pole, approximately 15 feet northeast from the existing pole number 1 on Porter Street. Is anyone here for that application?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Tim Lyford, National Grid Electric, 100 East Ashland Street in Brockton.
Could you give us your name again? I couldn't catch it.
Sorry, Tim Lyford.
Thank you.
Sure. As previously stated, National Grid is petitioning for one jointly owned pole, approximately 15 feet northeast of existing pole 1 on Porter Street. And this project was started because pole 1 is in dire need of replacement. The existing standard that pole 1 was built to is no longer available. So we're looking to relocate some of the equipment that we have on pole 1 and to update the infrastructure, upgrade it, and improve our system reliability.
Any questions?
How long will the pole replacement take?
Installations of this type, just the pole install can be done within a day.
And will you need to close off any traffic parking spots or lanes near the pole in order to complete the construction?
Most likely, the westbound lane on Porter Street will have to be shut down during the install.
Okay, and what are the hours planned for the installation?
Usually between the hours of 9 a.m. and 3 p.m.
I would just caution that, obviously, this is a highly utilized intersection with a train crossing nearby. So closing a lane will cause some issues. Not sure if we want to, if we have the authority to put any restrictions on any type of construction or what kind of detail requirements are, if there need to be additional ones, but
The chief of police has inherent authority to assign a detail when it affects traffic, so,
I'm just looking at the map.
yeah.
It's,
The middle of the day is best. I would wait until after that 9:15
Oh,
train.
yeah, I
Right,
mean,
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there will definitely be a detail assigned to the crew that goes out there, for sure.
don't want to interrupt the daily commute more so than it usually is with the MBTA, so.
For sure.
Anything else?
That's all.
So you're installing a new pole. Are you leaving the old pole in place? Are you
Right, so,
to replace that one because it will do what you need to do, so the existing pole one will be removed?
no, so pole 1 was going to remain. Basically, there's too much equipment on the pole itself, and we want to split it up and separate it and strengthen pole 1, and also upgrade the services that are being fed off of it. So a couple of those services will be relocated to the proposed pole 1-50.
Thank you. Any other questions? Nope. Is there a motion?
Move to approve of the utility pole application for National Grid Verizon.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? None. That's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 10 is a request to acquire property at 1449 West Street under General Laws, Chapter 61B. This was requested to be put on the agenda by the Open Space Committee. John Lenahan, Chair, who is disguised tonight as Jerry McDonald. How did you make yourself taller? I want to...
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is this on? Yep. Thank you.
So I know you're not John Lenahan.
No, Jerry McDonald, Open Space Committee. I'm filling in for John tonight to try to keep this moving within the town. There's a parcel on West Street, 5 acres, that the Open Space Committee and the Conservation Commission both voted to recommend for purchase by the town. And we went before the CPC Committee, and they had some questions which were relayed to you previously. And I'm just here to see if we have any updates from the Board of Selectmen and the town manager on the property owner situation.
The latest information that we have is that, so the public understands, Chapter 61B is a provision in state law that allows for property taxes for agriculture or forestry or other non-occupied use to be reduced. And when a property applies for that, the town receives a lien on the property and a right under the statute of first refusal if and when the property is sought to be sold. Pursuant to the statute, when a property owner seeks to sell in order to release the lien that Chapter 61B imposes on the property, they're required to give notice to the town. When a notice was received, it was sent to me and I distributed it to all of the boards and committees and volunteers who seem to have some association with the potential acquisition, including open space, I think the Community Preservation Committee, the Planning Board, and the Board of Selectmen. The requirements of the statute for notice are particular. The notification was sent to Town Council for review. Town Council has been engaged from the commencement of this, And the latest word is that the property owner in this instance has not yet given the town formal notice as required by the statute to trigger the town's right of first refusal. That's where we are.
That's where we are. Well, I guess there's some concern of the interested parties because it's been supposedly sold and the lots are for sale so I don't know what the town has any recourse in that situation.
All I can tell you is that town council has been made well aware of the situation. And the town is receiving advice from council on whether and what to do about it.
Okay. Is there anything you can share with me tonight based on that, or?
I'm afraid not.
Okay.
I'm afraid not.
Is there anything else I can help you with as far as the information provided or from the Open Space Committee?
Well,
We're having a meeting with the CPC tomorrow night, and I'm sure they're going to have a lot of questions also.
well, the issue of potential acquisition of this or any other protected or desirable space is where's the money going to come from to buy it? And the organizational challenge that this presented was the statute provides a 120-day period of time in which the town must exercise its right of first refusal. As I understand the statute, it doesn't really spell out when the town exercises that right. Is it subject to appropriation or not? Some other steps to take. As a selectman, I would be reluctant to exercise the right of first refusal that would require the town to pay money that has not been appropriated yet. And then one of the cycling issues that goes about with the budget process and CPC is the time it takes to get the CPC's recommendation. And when we have town meeting, because only town meeting can vote to appropriate and authorize the acquisition. So that is where, if and when there is a perfected notice to the town of this acquisition, we'll have to pay attention. And so the more you and your group are able to make sure all the ducks are lined up and quacking to the same tune, the better off we will be, because after 120 days, if the town had a right to buy and it isn't properly exercised, the question is what happens to it. And I don't know about my colleagues, but it would be difficult for me to vote to acquire without a funding source and put the town in a position of having a claim made with no appropriation to pay for it and no clean path by CPC, which I see as the only source to acquire this, ahead of time to say it'll be recommended. And so that is an area, from my own opinion, if you can work with them, would be better, because my sense is that if we wait for this to be perfected, we may well be outside a window where CPC could take action for town meeting to approve.
Okay, thank you. We are trying to push it forward with the CPC, but they had all these questions about the notice being perfected, as you mentioned. There was a lot of questions as to whether the notice to the town included a valid purchase and sale or not, and whether it needed to, and when the 120 days started, the clock started ticking. And as you just mentioned, who has the authority to respond on behalf of the town to express that interest? And is it the Board of Selectmen? Or is it the Board of Selectmen after the CPC's funded it or agreed to fund it? So I guess I'm still a little concerned, I'm a little confused about what town council, when the clock starts ticking, and who responds. Those are my biggest questions at this point.
The statute identifies when the clock starts to tick, which is, I believe, when the proper notice defined by the statute is delivered to the town.
Do we have that?
No.
Okay.
The body of town government with authority to exercise the option would be the chief executive office, which in a town is the Board of Selectmen.
Okay.
That's my sense of where we would go, but again, I can't see, if it's presented, it will go on the agenda. I can't see a hypothetical issue, will we purchase it without a funding source identified? This did come in time. I believe that there was an article placed on the town meeting, in annual warrant for town meeting, so that if this was deemed to be perfected, it would be for town meeting to vote. But that's the organ of town government to exercise the right would be the Board of Selectmen, but we have no money at our disposal to pay for it.
Okay. So I guess the come away from this is that town council has not determined that the clock has started ticking because it hasn't been a legitimate offer at this point, or a legitimate notice.
What I can tell you is that the purported seller has been notified that the statute was not triggered.
Okay. Does the town, thank you. Does the town have any recourse if the the existing property owner proceeds with a sale without having given the town the proper notice?
I really can't get into that.
Thank you.
But the question has been asked.
You look like you have questions. Michael?
We are having discussions with town council on this issue. That's really all we can say right now.
We might want to include it on a future executive session agenda.
It will be on the March 17th.
Yeah.
Now that we have received from town council what we need to do something with.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you. But if you leave with some money tomorrow night, let us know. Thank you.
It's Article 46.
It's in there.
All right, that concludes the business part of tonight, other than the consent agenda, town manager's report, and selectmen's comments. So let me turn to Dr. Grimm.
Very quickly, Treasurer Paula Newt wants to remind people, water, sewer, trash bills went out third quarter. They're due March 18th. If people send to the lockbox address in Medford, please include the check and a copy of the bill. Do not just send the check only. So it has to have the actual bill remittance and the check has to be received. And online, be sure to include the bill number and any other pertinent information. Motor excise bills were mailed Thursday, February 27th. They are due March 30th. Again, please send the tax bill along with the check. Just an update, Janice, Bruce had mentioned some of the things we do for infectious disease, something that was planned anyway, management of unusual infectious disease outbreaks. There's a conference on March 17th. I will be attending, Janice will be attending, and I believe possibly Chief Laracy. So we have a good complement going to that. On a happy note, Zip Trip, Channel 25 Morning News, will be coming to Stoughton. June 19th. I will get more details on specific locations, but they have identified our zip code as a place they want to come. So we are happy to welcome them on a lovely June celebration of the start of summer day. And another happy note, we received notice from the Lieutenant Governor that we received a second community compact grant from the state. And this was applied for to adopt as-of-right zoning and/or streamlined permitting to promote development in priority districts. This is going to be primarily used for Campanelli area in conjunction with another grant that we just received and a little bit of money, I believe, from our planning department. We should be able to fully do this project, and so we're very excited about receiving this grant. This just came in this week, so happy news. Money coming in, we like that. And that's it from me.
Thank you. Selectmen's comments. Ms. Howe.
I was going to remind people to vote, but I think the polls have closed.
Yeah, late.
That's all.
This time in California.
Yeah.
Sullivan.
Comments?
Nothing from here. So let's proceed to the consent agenda. I'd like to pull item G. Item A, approve payroll, bill warrants, and any other documents that come before the meeting. Item B, approve an application for a volunteer constable by Benjamin Morgan of 32 Carroll Road. Item C, to approve a lease agreement with the Stoughton Youth Lacrosse for property on the corner of Blackstone and Spring Streets, known as Marks Field. D, to approve a lease agreement with Stoughton Youth Soccer for property on West Street. E, to approve an application for Stoughton Youth Baseball Parade on May 2nd, 2020. F, to approve a water connection application for Patrick Kelly at 83 Myrtle Street. And H, to approve minutes from our meeting on February 4th, 2020.
Motion to, or move to adopt items A, B, C, D, E, F, and H on the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. That's unanimous. I need to recuse myself from item G, since that involves that involves a property on my street. We do not have
Quorum.
a quorum to take it up. So would you put this on the agenda for the next meeting? Do we have anything left to do in executive session?
Yes,
All right, so
very quick, very brief.
on executive session, item A, strategy with respect to collective bargaining with the fire union, patrol union, police supervisors union, the DPW union, dispatch union, professional and administrative library union, and town hall associates pursuant to general laws, chapter 38, section 21A3. B, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property pursuant to general laws, chapter 38, section 21A6, 31 Porter Street, the post office site that is for a green in the center of town. And C, to approve executive session minutes from February 4, 2020. Is there a motion for executive session?
So made.
Second.
On the motion, Mr. Sullivan?
Yes.
Ms. Howe?
Yes.
I vote yes. I should make a finding that each of these items, with respect to strategy, are items that would be detrimental to the town's position were they to be discussed in open session, and that it is appropriate to do so in executive session. Do we need to
Adjourn.
revote the, no, do we need to revote? Because I didn't do that first.
No.
All right. So with that, we will adjourn from the executive session. We will not return to the open session. Thank you all, and good night. Anything else? Good night. Thank you.